Hello, everyone. I wish or I hope you're having a great day right now. I just want to thank you for you all for watching all the previews or the recent videos that I have posted in YouTube. I really hope that you are learning a lot. You are digesting and taking a lot of information, and you are in the process of developing and understanding the self. So for that, kudos to everyone. Okay, now moving on for today. We're gonna be having a very jam-packed discussion and lecture for today. So that means that our topic and our subject for today is quite difficult and complex in nature. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about philosophy because today that's our topic. Okay? Now, the first task that we need to accomplish right now is to understand what is philosophy as a subject or as a discipline, and why is philosophy really important or really vital on understanding the self. What does philosophy contributes to understanding the self? Now, these questions rather, are quite difficult to answer, and it would require a few minutes or an ample of our time. Now, let's first dig in with the question of what is philosophy. Class, that's actually that's a hard question because until now, uh, academics and intellectuals are debating and having this argumentation whether what is the true essence, and what is the how can we really or truly define what is philosophy. But for today, right now, to make the discussion, or to make the argumentation simple or simpler than the others, what I want you to do is this. I want you to think of any questions. Okay? I want you to think of any questions right now that you honestly think is very deep, deep and difficult or complex in nature. Okay? It could be anything. Okay? It could be anything. Right? So, are you doing it? All right. Very good. Now, why did I ask you to do that? Well, for a simple reason that philosophy started with question. Class, that philosophy was one of the first discipline or subject that man has ever had. Okay? Without philosophy, there are no other subjects, there are no other discipline, there's no psychology, mathematics, science, etc. and etc. Hence, therefore, philosophy is considered to be the father of all of the disciplines and subjects. That being said, philosophers during the ancient period, they started with questions. What is the meaning of life? Where do we get our knowledge? How do we best live our lives? How could we organize the society? How could we know things from our surroundings? What is reality? Or where do we come from? Those questions constitutes the beginning and the start of philosophy. Right now, those questions can still be attributed or affiliated to philosophy. But as you know, there are other subjects and there are other disciplines that has already branched out into philosophy. But for example, psychology. Do you know that psychology during the 1900s is not considered to be a different subject or discipline to philosophy, but during the 1950s or 1940s, it was considered to be a wholly different discipline compared to philosophy. Now, one of the first subject that has became independent to philosophy was mathematics, because it has made its own methodologies and systems and process that is quite different with philosophy. Now, to elaborate the meaning of philosophy, well, philosophy, the questions and the answers of philosophy could be considered as foundational and the basis, the bedrock of all other subjects. Without philosophy, there would be no foundation for any other subject. So, what am I talking about right now? Science. Like, for example, the discipline science. We, we mostly take for granted the process or the methodology on how science arrive or attain knowledge. But before that, before anything else, it must have a supposition or a premise or a foundation on how it arrives or on how it attains knowledge. So that's where philosophy comes in, because philosophy is interested on on how humans do attain knowledge. That being said, philosophy has different branches. I know that when you were in senior high school, most of you have already discussed what is philosophy, what is the importance of philosophy, and how could we apply philosophy. But for the sake of our discussion, let me remind you and let me refresh your memory. So basically, there are four or five major branches of philosophy. The first one is ethics. So as you all know, ethics pertains or ethics works on the matters of human actions. That's the focus of ethics. And uh, human actions, when it comes to it pertains to the value or worth of a human action, could whether it could be considered as good or bad, right or wrong. But that's not where it stops. That's not where it stops, right? You ought to know, you want to know the quality and the worth of a human actions, because to you want to make your life a worth living, a life worth living. How could you better your actions so you could possibly attain a life of happiness? And that's what ethics wants to give us as a students. Second one is we do have epistemology as the one of the branches of philosophy. Well, from the word itself, episteme, it means knowledge. So epistemology is a branch of philosophy that deals with knowledge. How do we arrive or how do we attain knowledge? Hmm? So that's a for a person that has never encountered this subject or this discipline. That's kind of weird, or it's kind of perplexing for us, right? So the next one is what how do we consider an information or a thing as knowledge? How do we know something is knowledge and not just an opinion, or it's not just uh, false or hearsay? And what are the process? And one of the most important parts of epistemology is what are the process or the experience wherein we undergo and we partake to arrive and to achieve knowledge, right? The third one is we do have aesthetics. Aesthetics, I guess for uh, for women out there, you are familiar with it because most of the time we post this in Facebook. So aesthetics deals with the notion of beauty, the qualities and uh, are the value and worth of beauty. What is considered to be beautiful, pleasant, and the opposite. What is considered to be ugly and unpleasant to the eyes. But uh, aesthetics or uh, the appreciation of art transcends and go beyond our simple definition of beauty. It goes beyond the physical realm. Most of the time when philosophers discuss about aesthetics, they go beyond what the naked eyes see or observe. So it is much of a it is much of a difficult uh, enterprise. Most of the time they ask philosophers in aesthetics, in the field of aesthetics, ask the question of what is beauty basically, and how does something or someone or an entity could be considered beautiful? Is art subjective or objective? Is it really in the eyes of the beholder, or beauty comes from the object itself? So that there's this dichotomy going on. So we're done with epistemology, ethics, aesthetics. We also have ontology. Ontology as a branch or a discipline of philosophy, it deals with the questions of being. Okay, it deals with the question of uh, how does an entity or a being could be defined or could be categorized. So much for that. The last major branch of philosophy is metaphysics. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, metaphysics was one of the earliest branches of metaphysics of philosophy, rather. Why? Because metaphysics deals with the foundation of everything. It deals with the first question. The first questions that we have. For example, where do we come from? How did we arrive, or where do the world come from? Are we created, or is the world infinite or eternal? Is there a God? What is reality? What could be considered as reality or not? So these particular questions, these are what philosopher called or categorized as the first question. Okay, why is that categorized as the first question? Because of the fact that these are these are inquiries or questions that is very vital and very important to humanity itself. And most of the time, and back then, back in the ancient civilization, even prior to the ancient civilization, we often ask those questions. And humanity during back in those days were perplexed, and they were puzzled with these questions. Now, these five philosophical branches could be considered as major, right? But uh, there are minor, or there are branches of philosophy that still until today could be considered as a branch of philosophy, like politics. Okay, in history there is a philosophy of history, politics, and even in languages. Okay, even in communication in languages, philosophy penetrates, and uh, it actually penetrates and deals with these kinds of subjects. So what am I trying to say? No? So in conclusion, for the first part of this discussion, philosophy is a very vast, comprehensive subject. In it would be our journey in understanding ourselves would be incomplete without discussing and without understanding philosophy, and without realizing that one of the aspects, okay, listen carefully, one of the aspect of the self is being philosophical. That means we are thinking beings, we are rational, we're considered to be a rational being because we ask questions about the world, about the reality, and about the nature of ourselves. Now, the first philosopher that we were going to discuss is Socrates. Wow, big word, right? Uh, I know for the fact that you already heard somewhere or sometime the word Socrates, because Socrates is really famous in the philosophical world, or in the world where we talk about philosophy. Uh, Class, we do have a problem. Actually, we do have a problem. Why? Because I was actually tasked to discuss 10 philosophers for this lecture. So, what I'm going to do is to stop blabbering things, the blabbering, or give you a very long discussion about these philosophers, and I will go straight to the point. Promise. No, I would try. I would try to do that. I would try not to be carried away when discussing this philosopher. Now, oh, you're looking on this book. Now, this book is actually books of Plato. Now, why am I handling Plato books when I want to talk about Socrates? You will know later. Now, what the question is, why is Socrates really famous? When in fact Socrates lives in a world thousands, 2,000 years ago. Why is Socrates? Why does Socrates still has a very massive impact until today? Well, first of all, Socrates, well, one of the first thing, or one of the first answer to that is Socrates was one of the philosophers that deviates or goes away with particular questions that often philosophers during his time discusses and deals with. So these philosophers before him are called, or they were called, the naturalists, because most of the time, or every time, the only question that they do want to ask is about the physical world and the physical reality. What composes the world? Uh, what uh, what is the reality of the physical realm that we have? I know right now that these questions quite simple, and most of the time you are taking these questions for granted. But before, you must understand that before, uh, 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago, these are very hard questions. What the questions of what composes the earth, and what is the reality of the physical realm that we have. That was a mind-blowing question for a lot of philosophers and for a lot of intellectuals. Then if Socrates is not really into those questions, what is how or uh what is Socrates, or what is Socrates main enterprise, or what is his focus? Well, Socrates philosophy mostly focuses in epistemology, just like what I told you a while ago. Epistemology, ethics, and even politics. So for the first time in the philosophical history, questions of how we should live our lives, questions of how and what is knowledge emerge. So that's why Socrates was a really big hit, or a big deal in the ancient world, in the ancient civilization. So it's like Socrates opens up vast comprehensive doors for most of people, that most of the time during those times, these philosophers or other people did not dare, or did not take time to ask themselves. Okay? So that's the first reason why Socrates is really controversial as a philosopher. Now, the second reason why Socrates has gained so much attention during his lifetime in the ancient period was because, I think, on my own professional and philosophical understanding and critic of Socrates, Socrates has a lot of similarities with one of the considered deity of the Christians, which is Jesus, or Jesus Christ. They have a lot in common. No, they have lots of similarities with each other. But for today, I do want to focus on two things. First things first is, just like Jesus, Socrates has not written any philosophical manuscripts or philosophical books. That's shocking. So you might be asking right now, if Socrates did not write anything of his philosophical ideas and principles, who did it? Well, the question lies in with the books that I have here. So a while ago, I said that these books are Plato's works. Now, all the details, all of the informations, and all of the historical informations that we have to Socrates was recorded mostly by Plato, and Plato was his avowed student. Actually, Plato, later we will be discussing him. Plato was as much famous as Socrates, if not the same, right? And just like Jesus, okay, we all know, probably you already know, that Jesus' writings or Jesus' ideas was just written by his disciples and with his followers and with the word of mouth. So whenever Jesus tours, or not tour, it's a wrong term. Whenever Jesus goes into different cities and different location, he always the listeners, his followers, take notes, or remembers he what he preaches to them. Most especially his his disciples, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, etc. and etc. So without Plato, without the records and books of Plato, we would not be having a deep understanding and accounts of Socrates. The second reason why is because I think just like Jesus, Socrates was persecuted. He was killed with he was killed by his own countrymen. He was accused of poisoning in influencing the youth of Athens. And Socrates and other people, usually the sophists and other politicians and statesmen during that time, they accuse and they say Socrates is teaching false notions about God, and he was teaching uh, he was poisoning the youth during that time with his teachings about ethics, about life, and about religion. Though Socrates is not an atheist, but he was branded, he was labeled by by other philosophers and politicians during that time as an atheist. But that's not the reality. Okay? So, now, in as you know, Jesus was also persecuted because he was accused by the by the uh, Galilee no by the Pharisees during that time that he is teaching and he was actually preaching a false religion or a false or a fake idea of religiosity to the people of Jerusalem and Israel, or for the whole Abrahamic communities. So that is their commonalities with each other. Now, moving forward, what is the main tenets of Socrates' philosophies and ideas? Well, if we're going to discuss that aspect, now you have to understand that Socrates believes that we need to start with his epistemology. Socrates firmly believes that we could only attain knowledge and wisdom through the use of the dialectics. So the dialectics is a form of or a process or a system or a methodology of attaining knowledge wherein it is characterized or it is constituted with answers and questions. So Socrates back in the days he was really famous on asking and posting questions into every people that thinks that they know the answer. Okay, because he do wants, not that Socrates is an arrogant asshole. No, Socrates is not arrogant at all, because uh, as he said, he knows nothing. Okay, he accepts that he knows nothing, and the more he discovers other things and the more he gains wisdom, the more he realizes that he knows nothing. So that idea press the notion that as you gain more knowledge, more and more, you realize that there are a vast seas of informations and wisdom or knowledge that you do not know. Going back, so as I said a while ago, Socrates was famous in asking questions. So he will pose a question, and then those people that he asked will be giving their answers, and then with that answer, Socrates would form another question. It's like a debate, but it's in a form of answer and question. And through that process, through that experience, uh, answers answers emerges in a new light. That it in the end, at the end of the process, Socrates, as well as the one that he is speaking into or to, gains and unlocks and discovers a new idea or a new knowledge. Okay, so that's what Socrates believes into. That the dialectics, only in the process of asking questions and gaining answers could we attain and could we arrive in knowledge. And uh, also, moving forward, you might ask, what is the notion or what is the concept of Socrates with knowledge? Well, for Socrates, knowledge is absolute. It's like the concept of wisdom. Knowledge should not be it should not be changing. It should not be altered. It should be eternal and lifelong. Okay, so that means that it should be fixed. If something, if an information or if a knowledge is could be changed and not absolute at all, that means that you still did not arrive with wisdom and knowledge, that you must dig and you must delve deeper into finding the answers and the truth. Because for Socrates, truth is knowledge, and knowledge is absolute and eternal. Okay? And for Socrates, knowledge, one of the, he considers moral virtues or virtues to be knowledge, just like any other kinds of knowledge and informations. uh, Virtues are knowledge. In ignorance is a vice. So uh, Socrates believes that if we do want to live a good life, a fulfilling and a satisfying life, we should not only strive to get material knowledge about the reality, scientific or oratorical or communicative knowledge. We should also know what are the virtues that we should have, or how should we act, how should we properly, and how should a person act or behave. So these are the virtues, because virtues are sets of ideas and premise that guides humans actions and behaviors. Maybe before you have heard, patience is a virtue, right? And having virtues is just like having values, because values, these are the ideas and principles that we hold, that we believe, that is very important to us. Okay, in each and every one of us has their own sets of beliefs and values in life that you honestly believe into. Like some people, the virtues of hard work. They were working very hard because they believe that they could surpass any obstacles and challenges in their lives if they would just be hard working, or they were just hard work, or they will be perseverance. For some people, you should be honest, yeah? So you could live more harmoniously with other people. For me, I value the virtues of freedom, creativity, and equality, right? These so-called liberal ideas. Okay, but for Socrates, if you were gonna ask Socrates, what is the ideal principles when it comes to having moral virtues? He said, well, it's important for us to have moderation with everything that we're doing. That you're not doing it excessively, and on the other hand, you are not doing it very less. it's important that we are always doing things in the middle. Okay? In in being moderate, acting in moderation and behaving in moderation would eventually lead us into what? It would lead us into being prudent. Being a prudent person or having the virtues of prudence makes us judge, makes us very sensitive and observant about the decisions that we are making. It means that we are acting on the decisions that really matters, and we have really uh, contemplated upon it. Okay, so that's the idea of Socrates. Okay, he believes that it's our nature. It's our nature to strive and uh to thirst for knowledge. And when it comes to knowledge, uh, we should not set aside or set away ethics or values and moral standards, because for him, you could be so much wealthy, you could be so much rich, you could be intelligent, you know a lot of things, scientific or in mathematics, but still you can't live a good life without being a virtuous person. And the only way for you to do that is by utilizing the dialectics and practicing these virtues, because it could be learned. Okay, for Socrates, everything could be learned, right? Right. Now, the second philosopher that I do want to discuss is none other than one of the greatest students of Socrates. Well, it's none other than Plato. Now, there's a lot of things to talk about Plato. But for now, I would like to focus on his philosophies and his ideas with regards with this, which is related to the human person. Well, first things first, um, Plato believes that a human person, just like Socrates, he believes that we should always strive to attain wisdom and knowledge in life. And we should, as a person, as a human being, unravel the realities of this world. Because for Plato, there are two worlds. Now, it might sound magical, but this is how Plato characterizes the world. He said that there are two worlds existing. The first one is the world of forms, and the second one is the world of the physical world. So he said that the physical world here is just a reflection or a copy of the world of form. So what he is advocating, or what he's saying is, the physical world that we're living in right now is not the reality. It's not the real world, because everything is just a copy from another world. Okay, so what am I talking about? In this physical world, everything is changing. Everything is temporary. But for Plato, for what is real, what could be considered true and real, is infinite, eternal, and absolute. So see, they have, because he was the student of late Socrates, they have this commonalities and similarities with each other, right? In the world of forms, in that world, take note of this. Plato believes that the world of forms really exists. In that world, there resides the reality. There, everything is unchanging, absolute, and real. And one of the tasks one of the tasks of a philosopher, of a human person, is to break away to the illusion, to the illusion of this reality that we are perceiving right now. So what am I talking about with that? We must understand, we must penetrate, we must strive to unravel and discover the world of forms. Because in everything, in every object that we see here, most of the time, because we are this illusion, we are in the illusion, right? Most of the time, what we can only see in this reality is everything that is temporary. We can't see what is the absolute and what is the infinite and eternal to things. We can only see, we can only perceive things in their superficial and in their simple way. And our task, according to Plato, is to lose the chain, to break away from that reality. So how would you do that? No, you have to strive for wisdom. You have to strive for knowledge for you to understand the world of forms or the world of ideas. Moving on, moving forward, he also advocated the idea that there is a soul. Okay? In according to Plato, we can only gain knowledge about the reality, aka the world of forms or world of ideas, when we are using our reason, when we are using our logical faculties. According to Plato, just like Socrates, we can't delve deeper and we can discover reality by just using our senses, by just using our sense perception. What are those sense perception? Well, first, hearing, seeing, touching, and etc. Okay? For Plato, that is not the start, that is not the process, or that's not the real reality of gaining knowledge. Well, if you're gonna be using these sense perception and these faculties, we could only arrive with our knowledge of the world of the physical world. But if we would be truly, if we do want to become a philosopher like Plato, well, we need to use our reason. We need to use our logic. That's why for Plato, one of the highest form of knowledge is mathematics, because mathematics is a discipline wherein logic and reason flourish and dominates. Okay, basically you don't need to have your sense perception to unlock and unravel mathematical equations and mathematical answers. Okay, now going back, he advocates, because of that premise, because of that ideas, he said that the true reality of the self does not lie in the physical realm, but in it goes beyond. Okay, that there is a part of us which is considered to be the soul. Remember, the soul is not physical; it's immaterial. Okay, it's immaterial in it's not corporeal in nature. Okay, so what he said is the true nature and the true essence or the true composition or attribute of the self is none other than the soul, because the soul never dies. When we die, according to Plato, our soul is just being transported into the realm, the world of forms or the world of ideas. And according to Plato, the soul is separated or could be categorized, or it is divided into two. The first one is the appetite. That's the part of the soul that actually desires something, that demands pleasure and satisfaction. Okay, the next one is as you know is the mind. Okay, so what's that? Hmm? It's what we call the spirited. So this is the part of the mind or the self wherein there lies our passion, our agitation, and our sense of justice. Okay? So when we feel threatened about things, when we feel that we were being taken advantage to, this is the part of the soul that seeks justice or fairness. The third one is the mind. Okay? For Plato, the mind is considered to be the primary in one of the primary and major functions and agent of the soul, because the mind controls mostly of our self, the appetite and our spiritual self. So understanding these ideas of Plato makes us realize that the self that we knew is actually composed of different aspects. Our spiritual aspects that compose of our passions and our passion and our sense of justice. The second one is our appetite, the part of us that seeks and demands pleasure and satisfaction in life. So all in all, Plato's ideas are very controversial because it has similarities and commonalities with Socrates, but nonetheless, Plato was really a great philosopher. Though a lot of scientists right now and philosophers would actually argue against him, but he has tackled and he has discussed a vast aspects of humans and the society itself. Now, the third philosopher that we ought to discuss today is Saint Augustine. Now, this is one of the books of Saint Augustine, which is the City of God. In this particular book, he defended the Catholic Church during the medieval times, during the Dark Ages, to the heretics or the secular philosophers that attacks the religion, and that these philosophers blame and accuse the Catholic Church and the Catholic religion as the primary reason or the reason for the Dark Ages and for all the maladies and for all the suffering that the people of Dark Ages has experienced. So a great book. I would actually suggest for you to read it. For you to read this book. This is 1,000 pages of, but a worth, it's actually worth of your time, a worthy book to read. Now, going back to our discussion of Saint Augustine, uh, uh, basically his philosophy about human or the human self or the person is centered or is focused on his Catholic religion. It is very theological, it is very religious, because Saint Augustine believes that uh, our progress of being a person or our development as a person is based or centered in our self-realization and our self-presentation. And human life is the dynamics. This is the dynamism of love, and it is the love that comes from God, from Judeo-Christian God that we knew. And for Saint Augustine, we cannot live a, a very fulfilling life without really connecting and without really accepting God as our Savior and, and our God itself. He said, to put it simply, uh, uh, true happiness, true fulfillment and satisfaction in life is always based on how we relate our relationship with God. And basically, if without God as the center of our life as a person, we are bound to fail. We will always fail as a person if God is not in our center. And for him, because he was a priest and the fact that he was a saint, he put too much emphasis on the Christian philosophy. The only way to truth, to reality and knowledge is the Christian philosophy. Nothing else. Okay? And what is the truth? God is the truth. Okay? So as you can see here, Saint Augustine, just like the medieval and the Christian philosophers during that time, they have already made a great leap, a great they have already deviated with the ancient Greek, the ancient philosophies, because their philosophies, their principles are mainly based on their religion. The only way to truth, to wisdom and reality is through God. And that is Saint Augustine.